This is Armed American Radio's Daily Defense.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, because they don't want me to, that's why I do it.
Presented by X Insurance. X Insurance. From the gunbroker.com studios on the Car Arms Platinum microphone.
They're never going to stop us here.
Here is your host, the loudest conservative voice in America fighting the enemies of freedom, Mark Walters.
Welcome inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, the gunbroker.com studios on this Car Arms Platinum microphone. I am Mark Walters, and I will be filling your prescription for freedom today across the country and around the world. In fact, so far around the world, interesting, I was asked to do an interview, I believe, in Ireland on the 15th. I love getting the international interviews, 10 to 15 minutes. You never know how they're going to come at you when they're coming at you from overseas. Are they going to punch it from the right? Are they going to, or try to punch it from the left? Or are they going to pull their punches from the right? You never know. But they're always fascinated overseas about talking about Americans' gun rights because they lost their gun rights a long time ago. So generally speaking, I found the Irish, the Scottish, with the exception of the British hosts, they're very friendly to our gun rights. So we'll let you know as we get closer to the 15th where you can listen to that if you want to listen to it live. But all of this today being presented to you by xinsurance.com, a far superior product. I actually spoke to a number of listeners today who had questions about X. I called them directly. If you have questions about the product, mark at armedamericanradio.org. All right. This is going to be a fun half hour because I'm going to cover the media. I love to cover the media, what it means to us as gun owners, and finding the little subtleties in how the media bias. How does the bias creep in? How do they work it? What do they do? Is it a conspiracy? Are they all involved? We're going to take little bits and pieces of it today. Have you ever heard of a website called Fast Company? Have you ever heard of fastcompany.com? If not, I want you to go check them out. It is a progressive, let's say, business website. It is a business website with a progressive tilt and also includes a lot of news from the progressive side of the fence. Now, as I told you many, many times over the years, the general that knows the most about his enemy wins every battle and every war ever fought. You've got to know what the other side is thinking, and particularly not just from a current event standpoint, but also from a business standpoint. Or maybe your competitors are in here if you own a business. You want to know how these owners are thinking. How are they blending politics with their business? What does that do to the economy? All things for you to think about down the road, but there were two fascinating columns that I pulled out of there. One of them I didn't even get an alert on. I did get an alert on one for March for Our Lives. We're going to cover that in the next segment. But as I was going through the pages, looking for the one that I had the alert on earlier today, I saw from 1119 a piece. We asked Americans if they're still proud to be Americans. Here's what they said. Now, respect where it's due. A new Fast Company Harris poll shows Americans are generally a proud bunch, but not without their misgivings. Now, as you've heard me say many times over the years, I hate polls. Why? Because when you see, I don't care who does it, Fox News poll, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSDNC, CNN, it doesn't matter. Because their headline will read, 80% of Americans think this, a new Fox News poll said, and they asked 895 people. 85% of Americans didn't think anything. 85% of the respondents of that poll is what they got. But they frame it as if everybody in America can be lumped into this group of 895 people. And you and I both know that's a load of crap. So right here at the very beginning of this progressive site, I got to throw some accolades out here because it makes it very clear. That's according to a new Harris poll of U.S. adults conducted exclusively for Fast Company among the respondents. And that's important. That's important. And I got to tell them, hats off for that, because that clarifies exactly what we've been complaining about for years. So what does this poll say? What does it mean? Let's go into this thing. A global pandemic, according to Fast Company, has kept the country at home. Millions of us have lost our jobs as thousands of businesses shuttered. Now, I could argue that that was due to the policies of Democrat mayors and Democrat governors for the most part in their states. That's why that happened. But nonetheless, that's fodder for another show. Millions lost jobs as thousands of businesses shuttered. Police killings of unarmed black men and women roiled the nation, and waves of Black Lives Matter protests swelled in response. Now, those weren't protests. Those were riots. So again, there's a fundamental difference of opinion here, as you would expect. And after one of the most fraught election campaigns in recent history, our current president refuses to concede to our democratic system. So you see how easy it would be to get angry out of the box, bring your angry mark out of the box on all of these issues. But we're going to stay focused on the poll. This is what you get when you get over to a progressive site. And what does this have to do with guns? You'll soon find out it has everything to do with guns. That's according now to, this is, but in spite of all this despair, a spring of hope, if you will, the majority of us are still proud to be American. Now, remember who we're talking about here. We're talking about the progressive left. That's according to a new Harris poll, they say, of U.S. adults conducted exclusively for Fast Company. Among the respondents, 65% said yes when asked, are you proud to be an American in 2020? Suggesting that recent events haven't completely crushed, they say, quoting, our sense of patriotism. They have, however, thrown it into question, as 18% responded with no, and a near equal 17% said they were not sure. Now, keep in mind, okay, that this poll conducted by Fast Company, if you're a progressive individual, a socialist, if you will, would you have responded the same way 2 years into or at the beginning of a Trump presidency? Likely no. You would have been feeling despair. Would you today, as a conservative, respond about this? Well, you would as a patriot. Conservatives generally tend to be, depending on how the question is phrased. But I would venture to say that if you ask Nancy Pelosi about how proud she is to be an American, even if she said yes, she's going to throw a caveat in there about Donald Trump, because of her ideology will get in the way. That's just one example. But keeping that in mind, let's continue down that. Among the respondents, 65% said yes, but across nearly every demographic, a majority said they were proud, although more men than women said so at 72% versus 59%. Broken down by age, this is where the demographic gets very significant. Younger individuals, 74% of people older than 65 said that they were, yes, proud to be Americans, to just 56% of 18 to 34-year-olds. 56% of 18 to 34-year-olds. This is the crowd, the Generation X, or whatever they call themselves, the millennials, who have been fed a crapload of bias for the vast majority of their lives through institutions of higher learning, media, Hollywood, etc. So it's not unusual that you would see 74% of people older than 65 who remember life before this garbage saying, yes, they're proud to be Americans. The percentage of Americans did not change significantly, it says, when broken down by race. 68% of their respondents, of white respondents and black Americans, 68% of white and black Americans, think about that, and 67% of Hispanic Americans said they were proud to be American. However, 21% of black Americans said they were not proud, and 17% of Hispanics said they were not sure, which were the largest percentages of each response. Now, I have a response to those individuals who are not proud to be Americans. Go live somewhere else and we'll ask you that question in about 12 months, and we'll see how proud you are to be an American based on wherever it is you are today. Still, it says, and I quote, this overwhelming sense of pride is not without its misgivings. Listen to the verbiage. Listen to the way these are phrased. Nearly half, or 49%, of the poll's respondents believe America's reputation has worsened in the past 4 years under the Trump administration. Now, let me stop there for a moment, because I could rephrase that, couldn't I? I could say their overwhelming sense of pride is not without its misgivings. Why? Because only 49% of the poll respondents believe America's reputation has worsened. However, the majority of Americans, you see how we can rephrase this? Of 51% of poll respondents do in fact believe that America's reputation is still strong. So it's all dependent on the verbiage and how you word this. What difference does it make? What does it have to do with guns? It has everything to do with guns, because we're getting ready to see a flip, a paradigm shift, if you will, of the way guns, because this is what the gun grabbers do. They will flip the stats. They will lie to you, and there's more evidence in here of how they're going to do that in just a second. 49% of the poll's respondents believe Americans' reputation has worsened. Well, let me tell you what, that's 51%, the majority, who say it hasn't. 27% who said it was better, and 24% who said it was about the same. And among respondents for both questions, Older Americans were most likely to believe the country's standing in the world had fallen,
30.
interestingly, when 65% or 74% over 65 said they were proud to be Americans, while 58% of Americans in the 65-plus age group indicating so, compared to 42% of Americans age 18 to 34. There's a shift there that doesn't seem to make sense. In the South, 70% of Americans, according to the people that responded to their poll, 70% were positive. And in the weakest, the West, where 58% were not. Surprising? American South, proud to be Americans. Loony left, not. However, both of those numbers were over 50%. When we come back, I want to show you how they twist it and what it's going to mean to us going into, if we are, a Biden administration, and what it means for us as gun owners, because this is the blueprint right here. Back right after this. Don't go away. You know when we have 30 seconds again, okay?
All right.
I didn't get the recording started for the first segment, only for the second one here as I test these things, but everything appears to be working fine.
I'll be sure to screw up the commercial timing this time as I usually do.
No, please don't. That 30 seconds is that makes me have to go in and edit that out, and that's not easy to do. It's a pain, actually. So we'll start recording now that we know the timing's good. Rumble viewers will get segments 2, 3, and 4. That's okay. Martin says, my mom always used to say she loves statistics because you can make them say whatever you want, depending on how they're presented. That's exactly what we're getting ready to cover in the next segment before I go into the March for Our Lives, which I may hold off for Stephen Gutowski because these numbers are too important, guys. Time-wise?
10 seconds to 30.
All right.
And 30.
This upcoming segment of Armed American Radio is being sponsored by Gunbroker.com, the world's largest online marketplace to buy and sell firearms, ammo, and related accessories. That's Gunbroker.com. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the show indeed. I bought myself some ammo on Gunbroker.com yesterday, and going to be making another play over there today, possibly for a Bursa 380. I'll keep you posted. Welcome back inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, the Gunbroker.com studios, on this Car Arms Platinum microphone, and all of this being presented to you today by X Insurance. As I said earlier today, I made 3 phone calls to fans who had questions about X, and we had I probably spent about an hour and 20 minutes on the phone combined and had some really good conversation. If you have questions, and your question's a good one, I'll call you. mark@armedamericanradio.org. Shoot me an email. Let me know what your concern is. All right, welcome back. We're filling your prescription for freedom. Those of you who are watching on Rumble, you missed the first segment because of technical issues on my side, but here you are. We were covering numbers from a website, an interesting website by the name of Fast Company. And I'm going to go back now to where we were, and I'm going to pick up where we left off. Because it was about patriotism. How many Americans, and however many people they asked, were proud to be Americans? Progressive Left website. Nothing really unusual in the numbers that I gave you before. As we start getting closer and closer to the bottom, though, we start to see a little tweak in the way they talk about the numbers and the way they're presented. And somebody in live stream, Martin, says, my mom used to tell me something. He says, my mom always used to say she loves statistics because you can make them say whatever you want, depending on how they're presented. As gun owners, we know that to be the case because the left presents us in a negative light and uses statistics in a way that I'm just getting ready to show you now. Let's take a look at this. Southern and Charmed, it said. Regionally, American pride appeared to run strongest in the South with 70% positive responses, meaning, yes, I'm proud to be an American. And weakest in the West, imagine that, with 58% positive responses. The poll was conducted the weekend before, this is back on the 20th, so about a week or 10 days after the election, after news outlets called the 2020 presidential race for Biden. Okay, let's make this very clear. News outlets don't call races. We've allowed it to happen. But take a listen to this if you're a progressive lefty. After the news outlets called the 2020 presidential race for Joe Biden. That's still up in the air, by the way, and is still being disputed. Its results suggest, quoting, that the country is optimistic for the future, perhaps contributing to the patriotic sentiment. Why? Because if you're a lefty, what happened? A dominant 45% said they believed America's reputation will improve in the next 4 years, presumably under the Biden administration. A dominant 45%. Wouldn't the other 55% be dominant? What is the definition, by the way, of dominant? Well, it depends. You can look at it a couple different ways. It's an adjective. You can use it as an adverb, dominantly. You can use it as a noun. But what does it mean? It means dominant. It means the superhero. It means the one that's in charge. It means the biggest, the baddest, not the smaller number. Dominant is the larger number. But listen to the way, again, this is phrased. A dominant 45% said they believed Americans' reputation will improve. That means the majority of Americans, by an additional 10%, they didn't like what they heard over there at Fast Company, so they just omitted it and called 45% dominant. Sorry, guys, 55% is dominant. So in reality, the way this should read is a dominant 55% said they believed America's reputation will not improve in the next 4 years, presumably under the Biden administration. Now, how did that break down black, white? Black respondents being the most positive at 54% and 38%. At 54%, black respondents. And 38% said that the U.S. excels relative to the rest of the world in providing opportunity for a better life, financial success, and access to education. Subtract that 38 from 100 and take a look at the number that you have versus what they're telling you it is. This is the danger. Let me go to Greg. Greg, you got your ears on over there. Can you jump in here with me from the studio in Dallas?
Okay.
When you hear a dominant 45%, knowing that the actual dominant number should be 55% versus the 45%, Because this is the way they spin it with gun control. They'll say a dominant 35% of Americans believe we need new gun control, which leaves out the additional 65 that said, hell no, we don't want any gun control. When you hear that, what do you think? What goes through Greg's mind?
Well, being the conspiracy theorist that I am, I automatically start thinking about this is how they're framing it so that it makes it legitimate, at least in their eyes. And this is also how they implant bias, because a lot of people don't understand that framing has a lot to do with how news is presented.
Yeah, spot on. Greg just nailed it. And I had no idea how he was going to answer that question. I really, truly didn't know how he was going to answer that question. But when they leave, again, there's a lie of omission going on here. A dominant 45%. It's not, forget the topic. Forget that we're talking about what these lefties believe the reputation will be. Forget that. None of that matters. What matters is how they're creating this narrative and how they do it. A dominant 45% would have people believing that 45% is the majority when it is not the majority. Yet the way it's phrased, the way the response is fed to you, you tend to believe. And there's unfortunately people out there that will hear this and not even question it. Oh, a dominant 45% majority, so they believe blah, blah, blah. It's not, because they didn't break it down any further than that, okay? It wasn't dominant. Now, regardless of what the other numbers were, they didn't give them to you. Do you understand how this works? The left is experts at this. They've been doing this for years and years and years. Greg, did you want to jump in and say anything else before I move on real quick?
You've wrapped it up well.
Done deal. Thank you. All right. March for Our Lives in this same publication. This was today, out today, 7 a.m. Eastern time. I got the alert within minutes. March for Our Lives is asking Biden to create a cabinet position for gun reform. Now, how in the hell is that going to look? How would that happen? Would Joe Biden do that? Well, I don't think so, because Joe Biden doesn't have to. And if you read what they're talking about in here, because of its multifaceted nature, gun reform is a policy. Now, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty and go into the weeds, you go and you pull up Webster's dictionary online and you look up the word reform, and you'll, again, catch the lies of the left. Gun reform. Does your gun need reformed? My guns don't need reformed. I mean, I might like to get some work to them, with some really fresh work done to them, and beef them up a little bit, maybe give them some fluff and buff, but they certainly don't need reformed. All right. The ATF, you can't make this stuff up, man. It's just lie after lie after lie with these folks, one thing after another. Because of its existing government structure, the potential appointee would not technically be a cabinet secretary. Follow this here. But, quote unquote, cabinet adjacent. So you know what that means? I'm going to create a cabinet adjacent position that doesn't have to answer to Congress. That's freewheeling and can do whatever they want and suggest anything to me as president about reforming your guns. This is, if you thought the Obama, it's going to be nightmarish. It is absolutely going to be nightmarish. You had better do what you can do to see to it that right here in this state where I sit, that the two Republicans, that is Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, win their seats. When we come back, I'll talk a little bit about this with Stephen Gutowski from the Free Beacon, who will be here, and a couple of the articles that he's written lately for the Free Beacon. Don't go away. Got another fun half hour coming up.
It's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. I'm Alan Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation. When someone says we don't need that kind of gun, remind them the Founding Fathers determined what rights our Constitution should protect. There's a world of difference between rights and needs. It is not the function of government to tell us what we need or what we don't. Certainly no one needs an assault rifle or a Saturday Night Special, or for that matter, no one needs a Corvette with a high-capacity horsepower engine capable of speeds to 150 miles per hour. But in the hands of honest, responsible individuals, we have the right of choice. We have the right to read books others don't like. We have the right to listen to any radio program we choose. We have the right to dress the way we want to. We also have the right to own firearms of our choice. So the next time someone tells you, you don't need something, tell them it's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. Join the Second Amendment Foundation today so that this message and our Bill of Rights might live. Call 425-454-7012. That's 425-454-7012. 454-7012.
Celebrating 20 years in business, Gunbroker.com is the world's largest online marketplace to buy and sell firearms, ammunition, and accessories. With over 1 million auctions daily, you can expect to find a limitless number of top brand names on Gunbroker.com. Sellers, you can reach nearly 5 million registered users on Gunbroker.com. And buyers, you can buy with confidence knowing Gunbroker.com respects your privacy and is the only online marketplace offering buyers protection. Buy or sell your firearm on Gunbroker.com today.
Car, the 25th anniversary K9 and the venerable P9 in various configurations. Magnum Research, the classic Desert Eagle available in 50, 44, 357, and the new 429 DE calibers. The BFR biggest, finest revolvers and the Magnum Light. Auto Ordnance, the classics. Thompson, that's right, the Tommy gun, the incredible M1 carbine, and the one and only classic 1911. Car Firearms, a family of brands standing for your family's freedom.
The North American Arms 32 NAA Guardian pistol, designed in partnership with Conbor Ammunition. The 32 NAA fires a cartridge based on the 380 case, but necked down to hold the smaller 32 bullet. The result is a remarkable gain in ballistic performance that produces more velocity, energy, and stopping power than any conventional 32 ACP, 380 ACP, or 380 ACP plus P. The 32 NAA from North American Arms. For more information, please visit NorthAmericanArms.com. That's NorthAmericanArms.com.
Hi, it's Mark Walters, your host of Armed American Radio. If your company sells only the highest quality products and you're looking for a way to reach these listeners, you're talking to the right guy. Armed American Radio has a package available to fit every budget, from startup to the seasoned advertiser looking for that perfect way to reach this massive audience on roughly 250 stations in the top markets in the nation. We're everywhere, and the show continues to explode across the country after 10 years. Together, we can help you reach a highly engaged and extremely knowledgeable audience. To hear your brand on this huge radio program for less than you ever thought possible, and to speak directly with me, reach out to CCW Broadcast Media LLC right away at mark@armedamericanradio.org.
We're at 30.
Radio.org. And together,
Hold on, wait a minute.
your brand to Armed American Radio listeners, and keep this powerful voice for gun rights on the airwaves. Again, to speak directly to me, reach out to me at mark@armedamericanradio.org. That's mark@armedamericanradio.org. Defender Coffee was created by patriots for
Stephen's on hold.
Coffee for Americans, devoted to defending the Second Amendment. It's
Sorry.
That's right. What do we got time?
20.
Roger.
Back to Armed American Radio's Daily Defense with Mark Walters.
Indeed. Welcome back inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. Gunbroker.com studios on the Car Arms Platinum microphone. I am Mark Walters, filling your prescription for freedom today across the country. All of this is being brought to you by X Insurance, an AM Best A-rated carrier. If you want real insurance for your real life, for your real businesses, and for your freedom, look no further than xinsurance.com. Just scroll down to the bottom of the page. You might want the commercial. They do tons of stuff there. Scroll down to the bottom if you're looking for civilian or law enforcement. Right down at the bottom, click on the little link. You'll see it for concealed carry. You'll see it for law enforcement. And start the process. It's free. They'll get back to you, and they will build you. They will build you a real policy written in your real name. Imagine that. Not a third-party member type deal. No gimmicks, no nothing. A real insurance policy, xinsurance.com. Stephen Gutowski joins me from the Washington Free Beacon. Stephen, how the heck are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great. It's always good to talk to a real journalist. Now, Stephen, you probably missed the first half. I want to bring you up to speed quickly because I'd like your opinion on this. You know, as you know, the mainstream media does a lot of omitting facts. They lie through omitting things by not telling us things. You know, great example of that would be the Hunter Biden story, correct?
Sure.
When left-wing outfits give us, and as you know, when we see statistics, you can make a statistic out to be anything you want if you frame it in a certain way and create a certain narrative around it, right?
Absolutely.
So if I read to you that a left-wing site, and the poll was about patriotic Americans, how, what Americans were patriotic. This was coming from fastcompany.com. And it said the poll was conducted last weekend, almost a week after news outlets called the 2020 presidential race for Joe Biden. Its results suggest that the country is optimistic for the future, perhaps contributing to the patriotic sentiment. A dominant 45% said they believed America's reputation will improve in the next 4 years. Stephen, I would submit that the dominant number would be 55. That the majority number would be probably likely the dominant number. And the point that I'm trying to make here is by framing that in the way they do it, they ignore what was the majority in favor of the number that they like and agree with from an ideological standpoint, which is the lower number. And to me, that's extremely dangerous, and we're just going to have to get used to that because we've been watching reporters on the left and in mainstream press do that as gun owners for years. A whopping 35% of Americans want gun reform or changes in gun safety. Or is this something we're going to have to get used to if Biden pulls this out?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always people trying to mislead on, across the spectrum on especially on polling. And obviously, if the number if they're highlighting the smaller number, that's clearly a problem that they need to fix because, it's misleading. It's not ethical to do that. I mean, it sounds like it's possible that they also just described it poorly too. Like if maybe the 45% is a plurality, if there was multiple options, I don't know. It's hard to tell without looking at the actual numbers from the poll. It's always better, I find, to just be as transparent as possible with your readers and share all of the underlying information that you can. So if there's a poll, link to the full readout of the poll so people can go and look at it for themselves if they'd like,
Yeah, and, I kind of clarified that or tried to the best I could in the previous segment by saying I don't know what was the 55 made up of. It really doesn't matter. Yeah. It could have been made up of, 40% and then 30, or 10% said this, and then another 5% said, but they did. The fact is that it was that lie of omission. They didn't give us that opportunity. Okay. They leave it out in favor of the number that they like, and that's scary stuff because we see that a lot as gun owners, and we're getting ready to see a lot more of that. All right, I was talking about also in the previous segment that March for Our Lives, and we're going to go. I want to take you to Philly, a place that you and I know pretty well. But March for Our Lives now telling this same outfit, Fast Company, that Biden, they're trying to get Biden to create a cabinet position for quote-unquote gun reform. And as I mentioned in the previous segment, my guns don't need reformed. Maybe they want some fluff and buff. Maybe they need some new bluing. Maybe they need good cleaning. Okay, but they don't need reform. They work just fine. But they're talking about actually putting together almost like a shadow type. Because, and I'll quote, because of the existing government structure, the potential appointee would not technically be a cabinet secretary, but quote-unquote cabinet adjacent, holding the same power but coordinating across agencies. The National Director of Gun Violence Prevention would work with and report directly to the president. But Stephen, as you and I both know very well, that means that individual can work right around Congress. So is this something that we should be concerned about? Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds similar to, what Obama did with the various, czars for different initiatives that he was pursuing when he was president. It sounds like they want something like that, but for gun control. And I do think that, frankly, that's probably their most realistic approach to achieving something on the front of, stricter gun regulations, because Congress, however it turns out in Georgia, is not likely to pass big, bold reforms or new strict gun laws. It's not impossible, especially if Democrats do end up with a bare minimum majority, but it's less likely. And so you probably are going to see a lot of action at the executive level with trying to figure out ways to, pass new restrictions purely through the executive branch, because it'll be a lot harder to move through the legislative branch. And so something like that is probably where people should pay close attention to what's what's going on and what the gun control activists are trying to do. And certainly, I mean, March for Our Lives proposal is not something that a lot of people have latched onto yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if the other gun control groups started pushing for something like that as well.
Well, let me read you what they're doing. And first off, well said, because that, in fact, you kind of echoed what our good friend Alan Gottlieb mentioned when he was talking with Cam Edwards on Tuesday. And we're going to talk with Alan about this, listeners and viewers, on the Sunday Monster broadcast with Alan. It's possible that he may be in Washington. I believe he is attending the White House Christmas party. So we may not have him on Sunday. If we don't, we'll try to get him tomorrow. Well, yeah, maybe tomorrow or maybe Monday or Tuesday. We'll see. We'll check on the schedule. But this is something that we're going to be talking with Gottlieb about. He's very concerned about the executive action, and he laid out a number of possibilities, Stephen, that we could probably expect Biden to work with. And we know that their lawyers are looking for other ways too, just like Obama did, but this group is going to get far more aggressive. Here's what the other gun grabber groups have said. Other national advocacy groups have echoed the call. Brady, United Against Gun Violence, is recommending the same position. Quote, this degree of coordination and resource management cannot be accomplished without the guidance of a designated director, it says in its action report. Similarly, Everytown for Gun Safety has called for a national, as you said, Stephen, gun czar, and Giffords for an interagency task force. While the day-to-day activities of the director would have to be determined once the position is created, Levinson says the organization hopes the director would spend time breaking down silos. Okay, just working between agencies. This is something that would work around Congress. So definitely something that we're going to be paying attention to for the near future. Let's go to your piece now, and that's let's talk a little bit about Philadelphia. You wrote a really interesting piece. You know, I lived outside Philadelphia for a while. I know the city pretty well, and you and I have shared some foodie, recipes back and forth. Everything from the cheesesteaks to the scrapple. But you got to call them out now. Yeah. Philly buckles under legal pressure from gun rights activists. I would never have guessed that Philly's leaders would have buckled to gun rights activists ever. City to allow email applications and bid to avoid court filings. Go ahead and take us. How much break do we have? I'm not sure. How much time do we have, Greg?
5 till.
Okay. All right.
We're about to hit it.
Well, we're about to hit the break. So, Stephen, I'll leave you with this. When we come back from the break, I want you to tell us what's happening in Philly. And does that bode well for the rest of the state, maybe? If we see Philly begin to cave in, what does all that mean? Stephen Gutowski, Washington Free Beacon, will tell us about it. And we'll also ask him how much the NRA is spending in Georgia to try to make things right down here. Back with Stephen Gutowski right after this.
NRA is a joke.
Sadly, you're right.
Every time I'm at somewhere where they've got a sign up that says, "Excuse me, sir, would you like to register?" No.
We're in a fourth segment already?
Yep.
Well, alrighty then. Was it last segment you normally get screwed up, or this one?
Last segment. Because the defender spot's right before the return.
Gotcha. Let me know when we're at 30 in this one, too, okay?
All
right. Don't, dude. Don't make me say it.
I'm busy over here doing things. I'm busy. Is your clock broke?
Oh, God. How much time do we have?
It's like 1:45. That would get you.
Yeah, it did. So Martin says, flashing back. And Susie says, oh, Greg. Oh, God. Are we in 30 seconds yet?
No.
Man, oh, man. All right. That was... Get the mic off.
I'm laughing as much as you are over here.
Don't let anybody see you in the knock, man. Are we at 30 yet, please?
Almost.
Don't miss that cue.
All right, 30. It's 30. Still live over there?
The following segment of Armed American Radio is being brought to you by Defender Coffee. When you drink Defender Coffee, you're making a donation to a gun rights organization of your choice that protects and defends your freedoms. Welcome back to the show. Oh, welcome back to the show indeed. Defender Coffee's good stuff. Its promo code over there is AAR at defendercoffee.com. Defendercoffee.com, and they're great sponsors of the program. Please make sure to visit all of our sponsors. I'm so short on time with Stephen Gutowski that I'm going to jump right back into it. Stephen, welcome back to the program with me, brother. And remember, Stephen, I got to ask you to remember, because maybe you'll write about it, but you are in the gunbroker.com studios on the Car Arms Platinum microphone, and all of it is being brought to you by X Insurance, a far superior company to the gimmicky things that are out there. Get a real policy, grow up into a real, just like you do in your real life. When it comes to your freedom, don't play games. Stephen, let's go back now to Philadelphia because, well, I love the food in Philadelphia. I miss Philadelphia for that respect. But I was shocked when I read this from you that they buckled under pressure. Tell us what's happening there.
Yeah, well, so essentially, there's been a long-term issue in Philadelphia with the issuing of gun carry permits, in that the city has, well, for years, really, they've added extra steps beyond what the state law requires for applicants. And, that's created certain backlogs in the city, and to the point where, nearby Bucks County, which has maybe a quarter of the population, actually issues more gun carry permits than the entire city of Philadelphia. They issued more in 2019, which gives you an idea of how the process works there. It's clearly a much slower process that is already an issue, but with the onset of COVID-19 and some of the precautions that were put into place to stop slow the spread in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, the city had actually ended up at a point where their backlog for application appointments was into the over a year, which is pretty questionable, and gun rights activists obviously argue illegal when you look at the state law that requires permits to be processed within 45 days. Now, Philly was trying to get around this by making people sign up for in-person appointments to submit their application, and then they would push those appointments out months and months, to over a year. And so obviously they got sued by Gun Owners of America over that issue, a few months back. And then the gun unit, and this might not be surprising because, they're still requiring in-person applications. There was a COVID outbreak. And so they shut down the entire gun permitting unit for the last several weeks here. And this became an issue because obviously they weren't issuing any permits at that point, and no one was able to get a permit at all because the whole process was shut down. And so the Firearms Policy Coalition filed a federal suit on those grounds that they were violating the Second Amendment by just wholesale denying the ability for anyone to get a gun carry permit.
Here's why I think, Stephen,
in the state case,
this is why I think there's more to this story. And this is why I wanted to talk with you about it, why I'm glad you wrote it, because it brings us an opportunity to ask these questions. First of all, the reason they're backed up for a year is because of their own fault, because of their own regulation, because of their own requirements, and because they're in violation of their state constitution. They're in violation of their state law. They're in violation of passed and signed legislation in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, listener, it's very important. It's why we're talking about this. You don't live in Philly. What do you care? Well, you do care, because this is intentional infringement. They're standing in your way intentionally. They're throwing these roadblocks up in Philly intentionally. Expect to see a hell of a lot more of that. When I told you Virginia was going to look like child's play, I wasn't kidding. Expect to see a Biden administration, if it gets there, make this look like child's play, Stephen, because this is an infringement. This is intentional. And what's more, I think more important than anything, Stephen, is the fact that they are intentionally violating their own state law, daring people to do something about it. That's the party that wants our guns. Yeah. That's the party that will be in power, God forbid, if Trump loses these efforts. Go ahead.
And they really saw, I think what happened was they saw the writing on the wall. They had told the judge in the GOA case that they were going to reopen after this COVID scare. And then it got time to where they told the judge they were going to reopen. And it seems that they weren't able to reopen in the in-person interviews. So they decided to open for, the much safer email applications, which a lot of other counties were already doing in the first place. Is one of the things that, the gun rights activists suing them were asking for. And so essentially they caved to try and avoid, getting a negative ruling put in place.
These people don't care about the law. These people do not care about the law. And at the federal level, they're not going to care about the Constitution. They're going to create a czar. We were just talking about. They're going to create a czar. They're going to create a shadow cabinet position, and they're going to try to end run the legislature. And hopefully, we've got a Senate that will be able to stop them. Let's go to the Senate now, because time goes so fast on the show. NRA to spend $1.5 million in Georgia Senate ads, Super PAC ad labels, Ossoff and Warnock radical liberals. And this is the NRA Super PAC spending more than $1.5 million. Now, let me tell you something, Stephen. As you know, I'm in Georgia. And it's impossible. I mean, you simply can't get away from it. You can be watching Sesame Street, and you got John Ossoff and Warnock in your face, and media down here failing to tell people that Warnock has been arrested for child abuse. Did you hear that from me? You never heard that on national news, okay? They're not telling you anything about these two guys. These two guys are clowns, and they're trying to win this race. Tell us about this, the NRA, and I want to get your prediction of what you think is going to happen here. You got a couple minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly the NRA is making a big push there. I think that, that $1.5 million is just their super PAC. They also have their traditional PAC that's going to be involved too. It already has been. They've already spent a couple $100,000 in the race. They won't be the biggest spenders. There's going to be a lot of money pouring into Georgia for sure.
Already is.
But they're certainly outspending the gun control people at this point. And, the contrast is pretty stark. There's not really any debate over that, I don't think. The Democrats both are in favor of strict new gun control laws, whereas the Republicans aren't. There's a pretty easy choice, I suppose, on that front. As far as what's going to happen, it looks like it'll probably be really close again. I don't know which way it's going to go, honestly. We'll see. I think a lot of Republicans might be, this effort to undermine the presidential election there might make some people think it's not worth turning out in the Senate election. That could actually cost Republicans.
Well, you better hope not.
Seats,
Stephen, where you sit, and everybody where you're listening, you'd better hope that's not the case. Let me tell you, we're doing everything in our power how to get here in the state of Georgia, get everybody out to vote. Hey, Stephen, we're getting ready to call it quits today. Thank you for being here today, as usual. Stephen Gutowski, Free Beacon. Look him up. Google Stephen Gutowski, or DuckDuckGo, even better. Stephen Gutowski, Free Beacon, and you'll be able to see his rap sheet right there. You'll be able to read everything he writes every single day, every single week. Thank you, Stephen, for being here and for everything that you do. I am Mark Walters, filling your prescription for freedom. Again today, we're going to get up and do it again tomorrow. We're going to end the week, believe it or not. It's already Friday tomorrow. Can you believe that? And another Monster Cast on the horizon. Can't wait. My favorite time of the week. One day closer to ending this charade, this fiasco here in Georgia, and get closer and closer to this January 5th and get this thing over with. So here's what you do today. Carry on, carry often, carry absolutely everywhere. Never leave your cave without your club. No self-respecting caveman would ever do it. When you read these reports and these polls, please dig into what they're saying here. Understand it and pass it along. Educate people. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you on the radio.
You've just filled your prescription for freedom with Mark Walters, presented by X Insurance. X Insurance on the Armed American Radio Network.